I like the frog on the mushroom.
Yeah, I love that one too, man. I would really like to do that, to be honest with you.
Who tagged all these? How big would you make that tag?
I do probably like that more, you know.
Like here?
Yeah, I think that's a good spot for it, actually.
So I don't know.
Oh, I love that frog. What do you want? Fucking like an American flag rip out? Jesus Christ. Everything I do is silly.
What does it say, though?
It says that you like fucking bluegrass, you don't mind amphibians, and you definitely get high. I think this is like an interesting design, simply because it's not like some kind of like, you know, famous thing. It's not like some kind of iconic graphic. It's not like a Gibson girl or something like that. But, you know, it was pulled off of something, which I think is really interesting. It might have been pulled off of like a candy wrapper, like a cereal box. I think that's really cool. In the beginning, we didn't know how to make a good tattoo design. Neither of us did, right, Jeff? Jeff is a longtime friend of mine. We went to high school together, you know, learned by doing a bunch of really shitty tattoos on him. And like in the very beginning, he wanted to just get like line drawings of like hardcore band things. But now, yeah, he just wants to get really kind of funny, goofy, but at the same time sort of like mystical stuff. That's what he's into. I just wanted to do a tiger on his forearm, and he convinced me to do a tiger on a flying carpet, jumping through atom symbols and, you know, like the galaxy and like all this stuff like that. And normally that would be a terrible idea, but it works on him, and, you know, I think I did a pretty good job on that one. He's just one of those people that no matter what I do or do to him, it's all good. We're friends, you know. My wife and him were just having a conversation about potentially, you know, in the future opening up a record store, and then within 6 months we had the grand opening. So it was just a really cool thing, because it's like a pipe dream that every kid has with their best friend when you're in high school. When we're older, we're gonna have a record store one day, you know. And half the people don't even talk to their friends from that time period anymore. And here we are, grown-ass men, and we have a record store. Summer is usually the face of this place up front making coffees. Jeff is the record guy, and I do the antique stuff when I can.
We all do a little bit of everything. I end up in piles of records mostly. Dealing with weirdos, taking phone calls, going out to visit people who
try to rob you.
What are some indicators that it's going to be a good buy?
These are my uncles, and he just overdosed on heroin.
Yeah, that's usually a good sign, right? Yeah. Johnny Thunders got you into heroin, like, you know, like Sinatra did not, you know, like.
As soon as you hear a little bit of the history, you know right away that there's a chance.
I had a guy come in here with a bunch of antique medical charts. He was a teacher, and they were like in the facility closet of, like, you know, the science lab, and he had taken them 20 years ago or something, and they were probably sitting in there for 60 years, you know. Again, someone that's going to do that, it's kind of weird, but I like that. Those are my people, really, you know. That's my nationality. I grew up in a relatively old house, and my father actually used to have a military store. My father's a World War II collector, specifically Italian fascist stuff, and then he also dealt in a little German, but they had that for a few years, and then when they closed it down, they kind of brought everything into the house. So it was like the scariest thing ever. Like, I used to go down there to try to like work on like models, and like, you know, there'd be like two full dressed like, you know, Black Brigade soldiers standing next to me. It was like a weird situation to kind of grow up in, but it was pretty normal to me, and I actually really loved the fact that that was kind of normal to my parents. So it's funny, like some people walk through the doors here and they're just like hit in the face, like with, I don't know, the whole store. They can't wrap their head around why anybody would buy any of this. But for us, I mean, this is my life. This has been my life, you know, all of us. You know, it's like I travel on the weekend quite a bit when I'm not tattooing. Flea markets, yard sales, Craigslist. But I get it anywhere I can, you know. I mean, it's a pretty small window of opportunity for me to kind of get stuff, so all week I'm trying to line stuff up.
He's a bit of a picker. I mean, he likes to go to antique stores and like antique fairs. And then of course Black Gold now has given him purpose in that hoarding. You know, I think before It was just like having stuff. You know, we all like to just have stuff we like to look at or whatever, but now he's got the store. Now he can kind of actually justify having as much of it as he wants.
A lot of stuff that Dan looks for is kind of tied into tattooing as far as what the image is, or he's got like those Rock of Ages things, like classic tattoo motifs that are, you know, he looks for. If anything, I guess it's stuff that tattooing has borrowed from the real world, you know?
Dan's object hoarding, it comes mainly from tattooing, I would imagine, you know, even though there's other influences, because you just like are exposed to so many different types of art. You think about like tattooing now, well, you know, that crawling panther has been drawn for us already, you know what I mean? But there was a time when it didn't exist, and somebody came in and wanted a panther crawling up their arm. Well, Coleman or one of these guys had to find some sort of reference for this. And a lot of early designs, they'll come from old children's books or comics or whatever. And then like, you know, or like the Cupid is a good example. Like, you know, Cupid was like an actual doll. Then it became a tattoo icon over the years. But now, because we know that Cupid so well, you go into an antique store or something, you see a little Cupid doll sitting on the shelf, you're like, oh, there it is in 3D.
Oh yeah, there's like another thing. That thing is like ready to be a tattoo too. That there's a Cupid little like home butler thing, but it's a Cupid. Who doesn't want that? My house is more or less looked like this for a long time. It went from Star Wars toys, as much as I can fill. I thought it was corny for a while, so then I did the Thrasher cutout thing. As long as the walls just looked like vomit, like culture vomit, I was happy. You know what I mean? And then it became like Tattoo Flash, and then Tattoo Flash kind of evolved into old circus prints and lithographs that were, you know, what a lot of the tattoo stuff was derived from, and so on and so on and so on. And the next thing you know, you got a lot of stuff.
It's not a big apartment, and he's filled the walls, but it's all amazing stuff, you know. It's top of the line, you know, taxidermy, old Tattoo Flash. It's just the way he wants it, you know what I mean? You know, it's a good representation of the stuff that he's passionate about.
Oh, I just found this at a flea market. It's, you know, like a studio portrait of a mother and two children, and the two kids are on a taxidermied ostrich. It's like anything, you know, you get into collecting one thing and then you start to pick up the subtleties that make one thing more appealing than the other. I mean, I've been, you know, flea marketing for a long time, and if I had seen something like this, I'd probably be interested in buying it, but I wouldn't know why. Whereas now, and having kind of like been a little bit more immersed in collecting, it's pretty easy to pick up on what makes something desirable. So to me, that's very desirable. It's an ostrich. How often do you see an ostrich in a photo from turn of the century, you know? This is a photo I picked up that I thought was pretty interesting, just in a box of random photos. It's obviously like some kind of carnival performer, but she's reading a magazine, and the back ad of the magazine's "Tattoo Your Lips." Another stony tattooing the inside of a woman's lips.
Very well studied and kind of stuff of that era of when, you know, American tattooing sort of came to life. He sort of knows a lot about that era in history anyway, and so I think he collects a lot of that stuff. He's very well studied in antique flashing, and he knows a lot about that stuff.
I have a lithograph of that at the store right now. That's the one that I said, you know, like, you see a lot of the lithographs that old tattooers pulled from. That particular image I had never seen recreated as a tattoo before. And I had actually obtained this about 5-6 years ago. And I was like, oh, that's the coolest thing. Didn't know who did it. It came from the same collection that a bunch of other stuff that I was told was Coleman came from. He was a tattooer from Virginia. He just was the pioneer of a lot of the style that we see today. I mean, he had a knack for drawing really pretty women, and, you know, everything he did was a step above everything else was going on at the time. This is a famous photo of Coleman outside his shop. So, you know, I've seen this photo hundreds of times. I was like, oh, if I can only see around the corner of that, you know? And then when this book came out, boom, the other wall, and that made my day. 100%. That is that. I was told his shop burned down, and a lot of the stuff got like kicked to the curb, and the woman that I acquired a lot of this stuff from, her husband had gone and I guess picked up a lot of this stuff literally off the side of the road, and so that's why something like that exists. You know, that was just 2 of the designs on the sheet that weren't scorched. There's a photo of him tattooing. It's that famous photo of him tattooing with the visor. There's all the flash on the wall. He's got 1 sheet off the wall and it's propped up on a station. And these 2 designs are on that sheet, but it had been cut. A lot of this stuff got cut. One thing that I really don't ever want to be is self-absorbed. And when someone asks me to talk about all these things that I've surrounded myself with, it makes me feel like I'm self-absorbed.